Have you ever wondered what was out there in the night sky? Stared up at the stars in the hopes of seeing something out of the ordinary? Have you ever heard unexplainable noises coming from a vacant room, or watched a shadow cross the wall in front of you? Have you asked yourself if there's life after this one, or if you had life before? What about strange creatures that are mythical and elusive? Have you experienced deja vu, or felt a prompting to leave because you felt you were in danger? What if tomorrow you were on the fringe? Welcome to another episode of On the Fringe. I'm Philip.
I'm Mark.
And tonight is the first show of the new year for this show. We did our What If Tomorrow Monday. If you caught that, we appreciate you watching. Hanging out was a good time. We messed around with some AI programs and stuff like that. It was fun. And it's kind of strange too. I mean, kind of scary. But tonight, obviously you guys can see we have our part-time co-host Pam and Jess. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
Part-time permanent.
Thank you.
Part-time permanent, yeah.
Part-time permanent.
But yeah, tonight we are talking about some hidden history, forgotten history, ignored history. I don't know how you would classify it. But we're going to kind of discuss the Annals of Kentucky. Hi, Chris. It's kind of strange, I mean, it's got a little bit of Atlantis in it.
All kinds of stuff.
And I know the book, Mark, you sent me the book that you to look at. It was talking about the ancient history of that, but
It's only 45 pages.
Yeah. And I didn't get a chance to read it all, and you sent it to me a while back.
That's all right.
But it was written in 1824. But before we jump off, first things first, let's talk about our affiliates, all that good stuff. My Patriot Supply, check them out. Big time. I'm sure it could help right now with a lot of people. It's probably going to get worse if you ask me. Look at the price of eggs for that matter. But Conflicted the Game. Use the code WHATIF at checkout to get, I think, 20% off. Duke Cannon, EMP Shield, and go to our website, What If Tomorrow Media, and check out our merch over there. We got some t-shirts, I think some hoodies, stuff like that. With that out of the way, also do us a favor. If you don't want to support, buy stuff through our affiliates or whatever, buy us a coffee. And it's buymeacoffee.com/whatiftomorrow. Whatever you like, we'd appreciate the help. I've got some ideas we're trying to move. So help us grow the show. Excuse me. And donate. We'd appreciate it. Moving on.
Watch out. We might see lungs.
Yeah, I'm dying here. Don't know where that came from, but moving on. I'm not well versed in this. I've heard a little bit about it. Just like I asked you in the backstage, Pam, if this is about the mound builders and they're involved in this. But this kind of, from what I understand, this really kind of goes into that history as well. What I did pick up talks about evidence of a flood, of the United States being, hi, Tim, the United States being underwater. At a certain time in history. I think I seen up to like 6,000, 6,000 feet?
I'm not sure.
But I found that interesting. I mean, I know, because I remember being out on my grandparents' farm. There's some old hills up here by Cherryville, and they lived on one of those, and we'd go up there and you'd see like fossils and stuff like that in the sandstone and whatnot, and it was looked like sea creatures, aquatic creatures. So I mean, I've believed that for a long time, that we've been covered by water, but there's a lot more to the story, and I'll let you guys dive off into this. I'll just be supporting Cass this evening because, like I said, I'm not real well versed in this. So
what you're talking about, Phil, is like ancient America. That was part, like Kansas was under what we were part of a sea, an inland sea. Um, and the things that we're looking at happened quite a bit of time after that, but still, it did involve a flood. And from what we can tell from not just one source, but quite a few sources, that it may have been the catastrophic great flood that is talked about in not only the Christian Bible, but also Hebrew and Egyptian. Their tales of it back in their history. Quite a few different civilizations have this in their history. So we do believe that it probably happened, and it probably cut off communication between Eastern Europe and what we now call the United States and North America at the time, because their understanding was the entire thing went underwater and sank during this cataclysmic event. And it really, truly didn't, but it cut off all communication there for a long time.
The big thing about that I saw while reading with this is it looks to me like they may have got some of the timeline flipped around
Mm-hmm.
from some of the evidence that's coming out today. But from what I've seen in some of my hidden history deep dives, is that everything in here is covered. This guy looks like he's got 2 or 3 things out of place, but he's got all the events.
Yeah, they're there. They may not be in exact spots that they should be in, but you know what? It's history, and as more things come to light, the more pieces are put together in the puzzle. So that's really, I mean, this his paper. This is C.F. Raffinesque is who we're talking about, and he, let me find out what his credentials were. He was for some years a professor of Transylvania University at Lexington, Kentucky. And the book that we're referring to, which is called Annals of Kentucky, or Ancient History, forms the introductory chapter in Marshall's History of Kentucky. So it's a well-known book. It published by itself, it's only like 45 pages, but as an introductory of Marshall's history, it's quite a bit bigger thing. But it's really interesting what he came up with. And he doesn't just refer to one source, he refers to quite a few sources, Plato being a big one,
Right.
and then he goes back from Plato and cites Plato's sources, which I thought was really interesting too.
Yes. I find it interesting that even as small as this book is, most copies you will find have been redacted.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, Google got a hold of an unredacted copy for their scan. Thank you, Google, because they have a program to
Yeah.
find these old, out of date books that are in danger of being lost and scanning them and making them available to the public for free. And after the show, I'll try to get it up on a link up to it on our uh, Facebook group so
Mm-hmm.
people can study it for yourself and take from it what you will.
Yeah, don't just take our word for stuff. You dig into it. We're just really giving you some reference material and telling you what we took from it.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff we're going to cover in the next few weeks really links up with this nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I put a video that I watched recently up on our Facebook group. I really recommend y'all watch it. It's fascinating, and I'll probably make several references to it tonight. In fact, but I mean, the guy starts out. It's pretty boring. It reads like a textbook,
Mm-hmm. It does.
but I get excited. In part two, Cleo, or Historical Annals of Mankind in Kentucky. He talks about the first cradle of mankind being Eden or Emma. Uh, but down here, he gets into it. The history of the Atlantans, and Utahns. History of these two nations and their settlements in America may be divided into 5 periods. From the dispersion of mankind to the first discovery of America, including several centuries. From the discovery of America to the foundation of the Western empires, including some centuries. Uh, from the foundation of these empires to the Pelagian revolution of nature, including several centuries. From the Pelagian revolution to the invasion of the Iztacan nations, including about 12 centuries, and from the Iztacan invasion to the decline and fall of Atalan and the Khitan nations in North America, including about 30 centuries to the present time. That's a lot of time.
30 centuries. Yeah, think about that. That is a really long time.
Then he gets down in there. 2 nations which peopled the western shores of the eastern continent, which would be Africa, were the Gomerians in Europe and the Atlantes in Africa. The Atlantes formed a powerful empire in North Africa, which gave laws to many nations. And it's got a whole list of nations. I actually share screen if you want. Now that's interesting because if you'll look at a map of North Africa, just south of the Pillars of Hercules or the Strait of Gibraltar, as we know it, but where Plato said the Pillars of Hercules, just south there's a mountain range. You know what it's called? It's called the Atlas Mountains. And just south of that is a geological formation that many people think that the capital of Atlantis was built on because it matches Plato's description so perfectly. So that's fairly interesting, I think.
It is.
So, I mean, we go through. I invite people to read this. I want people to read this and make up their own minds. There is a lot of stuff that really, really, really fits, and I find it suspicious that universities and such over the years have spent so much time trying to get rid of it.
They did a good job hiding this information too for a long time. It was just buried in plain sight. And a lot of times, if you want to hide something, the best place to hide it is in plain sight.
Where do you hide a tree? In the middle of a forest.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me was when Pam kind of brought this to our attention. I, a couple of years ago, had stumbled onto a very old book called The Discovery, Settlement, and Present State of Kentucky that had been written in 1788. The copy that I found was also redacted, like has happened to this book. And I managed, through traipsing down through all of the libraries in the US, finally found a copy that was unredacted. And inside of it, I found all of this stuff about the very tall, white, light-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, very tall group of Indians that lived in central Kentucky that the Cherokees and the Shawnee claimed were not, were the original ones there, but were not of native tribes.
Yes.
And when I read this, it all led to that too. And unfortunately, somewhere along the line, somebody redacted this book also and removed all of that type of information out of it.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that 2 different authors at 2 different times made up the same stuff. And they both did the same thing. They both went into the indigenous areas and spoke to tribes and spoke to people that had been there and
About
gathered the
oral
information.
traditions,
Yes.
Exactly. And basically came up with the exact same thing. And if you do get the chance, if you can find the unredacted, Discovery Settlement in present state of Kentucky, read it also, because it's almost like a second book to this one, to the
Mhm.
Annals of Kentucky. It's by John Filson, Filson. Absolutely get the unredacted. If you get the redacted one, there's actually an entire chapter at the beginning that lets you know the majority of what he said was false.
Yeah, that's been added
Why-
in later, obviously.
Yeah. Why would you reprint out a book and then put a disclaimer at the beginning that says it's false?
Right.
Oh.
So
You know what's
Um,
interesting when you talk about the fact that they found the very tall burials and things in this, it's actually from the Register of the Kentucky State Historical Society. On page 25, it says right here, confirmed by others, Colonel John Payne, an officer of distinction under Harrison in the Northwest campaigns of 1812 and 1813, and for years a citizen of Augusta, Kentucky, in written record says the site of Augusta is a burying ground of the ancients. A post hole cannot be dug without turning up human bones between Bracken and Locust Streets, 1.5 miles. From the cellar under my house, 60 by 70 feet, 110 skeletons were taken. My garden was a cemetery with skeletons of all sizes from 7 feet to infants. 7 feet.
Wow.
And this is the ancients
Mhm.
that, you know, we hear that were very small. No, not all of them were, obviously.
yeah.
No,
And this
and
this is this
I
is a
also
colonel, an officer, you know, of distinction in 1812 that's
I
saying
also thought it
this
was rather
hard.
interesting that he spoke of the odd burials that they found, the stacked bodies above
Mhm.
ground, very much like Egyptian sarcophagi, and very much like we do now, especially in places like New Orleans where we have to bury overground. And all of those burials were found people 7 foot and taller inside of those. So I thought that was just super interesting.
There's
Now, according to Filson, the Cherokee later on actually were encouraged. At the time, there was still some of these very tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired people still living in the Kentucky area, but they were living in and the Cherokee and the Shawnee were encouraged to marry into these families. And now the Cherokee and the Shawnee carry this bloodline
Mhm.
that has something very, very old in it. They have very, very old DNA. It's really interesting. One of the tribes that he spoke to when he was writing this book was the Mohawk tribe, who were not indigenous to the area. They had come in later on, and they called the Cherokee. Let me look to make sure I say it correctly. The Otik Teran, and in Mohawk that means the white people who live in caves. And that's what they called the Cherokee, because by that time they had already integrated into that tribe, into whatever tribe that was that was living in the caves and had the odd burials.
That's fascinating.
and I'm wondering if part of the reason why we see some of this redaction is there was a concentrated effort at a point in our history to erase the history of the American Indian.
Well,
Yeah.
100% there was, yeah.
So
Yes.
it might not have been about the whole Atlantis link so much as it was we want to erase these people's claims on this land.
Hmm. There is
Yeah.
ample evidence that just recently, you know, with the Civil War, before the Civil War, Revolutionary Wars, stuff like that, that's exactly what we try to do. I mean, we have we're horrible. I mean, the white people were so
Humans are
horrible to Native
nasty.
Americans. Yes, we came in and, you know, offered them blankets that were riddled with smallpox, which, you know, they had no immunities to, and just wiped out so many of them.
Yeah.
The things we did to them were just absolutely just
Ghastly.
atrocities. They were terrible,
Yeah.
you know. And how do we make ourselves feel better about that? Well, we gloss over their stories and poo-poo them and knock them to the side, and, you know, all these good
Erase
things.
it.
And we don't want to give them any more foothold than what we felt they had. And I'm speaking for, the people that came over here and took the lands from.
But that's just the modus operandi of humans in general. I mean, wherever we go, the winner writes the story.
They're shitty.
Yeah, humans are assholes.
Completely.
Not only has everybody got one, everybody has some of them in their family. And
word.
A lot of them are just unrepentant about it. I mean, and honestly, sometimes being an asshole is fun. I practice sometimes in the mirror.
That's funny.
But I mean, serious. A
Really,
lot of this.
really quick.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, really quick, before we head off, when we keep going on this track, I wanted to take a quick little sidetrack for anybody who's listening, who's thinking this doesn't sound very paranormal or whatever, and I don't know if I'm interested in this because it's just history and blah, blah, blah. Well, it can actually take you into so much stuff. But one of the things that I find so interesting is that this has everything to do with Mothman and the Silver Bridge.
Really?
It absolutely does. So supposedly the Silver Bridge was, the whole area was cursed by Chief Cornstalk. And Chief Cornstalk was the chief of the Shawnee tribe. And I'm a big fan of Mothman, so I have done a lot of research, especially into Chief Cornstalk. And what you won't see in the history books, and you won't see on the little Wikipedia page, is that Chief Cornstalk got around. He was not only the chief of the Shawnee, he was also the chief of the, well, actually, they called him king of the Cherokee down near the Hellier area. And he was also chief of the Mohawks down there in that area at some point too. He also dabbled in the silver mines down there. You can find his name inscribed on no less than 5 silver mining caves there. Now, it's interesting that he was the king of the Cherokee, because you would honestly say king, queen, princess, and princes aren't active in Indian. That's a made up powwow thing when they crown their princesses. But if you'll look back here through the Annals of Kentucky and the settlement of Kentucky, you will find that those very old Atlan tribes had kings and queens and senators and things like that. And it has trickled through the Indian tribes, at least up to that point. Chief Cornstalk was considered a king because his family was a straight descendant from the people who married into the Atlan tribe, the cave dwellers. Chief Cornstalk was a descendant of the Atlans that came over. So maybe that curse that he put on the land had something to it. If they had any kind of abilities, like some people think that they did. And a lot of people think that those cave dwellers were ultimately alien. The Cherokee also called them star people. So perhaps before they started off in the Atlan area and then traveled here, perhaps they were from elsewhere.
I don't know.
Just a fun little nugget.
Yeah, it could be.
And
really interesting.
An advanced civilization doesn't have to be technologically advanced to be advanced.
No.
I mean,
our technology is not the only type of technology that valuable.
And it would be interesting to actually see. I'm hoping at some point to watch that new series on Netflix from
Graham Hancock.
Graham Hancock, and see how it all plays into what I've been seeing and finding in my research, because it's just crazy.
I have not yet seen it. There is another show I would recommend, and that is The Viking Stone. And I want to say it's on Netflix. It might be on Hulu, though. I'll have to look and see. It's really good because they go back into searching for the origins, especially up in the Minnesota area. And they actually, in one of the episodes, they talked to, I can't remember if he's a farmer or he's a landowner, regardless. And they had ran across a 7-foot skeleton, and where it was located, archaeologists, the state refused to allow them to dig it back up. Basically,
Right.
they told them they were not allowed to do it.
Now we're getting into the territory of giants
hmm
and the
Yeah.
Nephilim.
And
So-
that's definitely poo-pooed in the scholarly fields.
Yep.
That's why this is on the fringe.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, early on we were talking, and I asked, if this is the same as the mound builders. Well, it's my understanding that a lot of these mounds that have been excavated, there have been giant skeletons found under them.
They have found some in them for sure.
In the Egyptian style artifacts.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting that the Egyptians themselves claim at some point to have been a colony of another greater civilization. So
I was wrong.
we have similarities between the Egyptians and the Indians or Atlans here in the United States. They would have a common root. So, of course, they would have similar artifacts. I also find it interesting that Western civilization wants to paint Atlantis as being Greek-like. And I think we're painting them with the wrong brush. I think it should be colored more Egyptian.
I understand the Greek reference, though, because of Plato and all
Because
that.
of Plato. Yeah, I mean, that's what they knew.
According to this information, let me flip around and find it again. What they're
Well, look at this. Look at this girl's highlights.
Oh, it's terrible, you guys. Look at that. It's like everything is highlighted and annotated, and
She's
it's
rubbing
so
off
bad.
on me.
It's so bad. Okay, so at the beginning of this, Prehistoric People of Kentucky, it's by Z.F. Smith. And this one I found on jstor.org, JSTOR, which is a place where you can pull, let's see here. It's a not-for-profit service that helps scholars, researchers, and students discover and use and built upon a wide range of content and trusted digital archive. So it's basically trusted sources. When he begins talking about this, it says these records concur that over 1,000 years before the beginning of Greek culture and Greek conquest, the islands of the Atlantic Ocean and the continents of America were not only known to the nations of the Old World, who then dwelt upon the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, but were also known to the seats of the empires and civilizations rivaling their own, sprung from colonies planted there from their own people in the dim twilight of tradition. So they're talking, 2,000 years before Greece was really a huge, thing in the world. 2,000 years before them, Atlan was already there, was already known about, and had a civilization that rivaled some of the other great civilizations that were actually brethren with them, because their people had come and colonized here, and those families knew each other. They went back and forth. There was I want to say 3 or 4 main ones. I know one of them was called, where's it at? One branch of the family was Titans.
That's actually in the ancient annals of Kentucky too.
Yes.
They had wars with the Titans.
They resided in Europe as often as in Africa on either side of the Mediterranean, and had to contend against the Titans, a branch of their family reigning in the Alps. So, yeah, they were well known. But when it came down to this cataclysmic event, they thought this whole portion, they were told it was gone, that it died. But if that flood came in and flooded out, the size of Florida, I could see why they thought it was all gone.
There's a mudslide off the coast of the Eye of Africa where they say that Atlantis capital was, that is as big as Florida underwater. The only way you're going to find evidence of that civilization is to excavate this huge area, and you're not just going to sift through that pile.
No, that would be a huge, ginormous undertaking that nobody wants to do because nobody wants to prove these points because it doesn't play into the pretty narrative that's been, tied up with a bow and handed off. This stirs everything on its ear, and nobody wants to do that. If you try to do that and you are an academic, you're gonna ruin your career.
You're going to hang yourself. Yeah.
You're gonna hang yourself. There's a few out there that are willing to take the risk, but they pay the price for it too.
Yep.
Yeah. They're ridiculed.
And that's sad.
Because if you don't toe, this is what I hate about academia. If you don't toe the line of the people who run things,
Mm-hmm.
your name is mud.
How
and
often?
It turns out that these people are usually the ones that's right.
How often do we hear that things that were sent to the Smithsonian that could prove some of these things just disappear?
Oh, we received it, but we don't know where it's at.
The skeletons of
Like the
giants
giant skeletons. Yeah.
and they're gone. They have disappeared. When there is absolute proof that they were sent, there's a paper trail, everything's there, and they're just like, oh, we never got them. Oh, we've never seen those. We don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, they may have been in that fire.
Yeah.
It's
so
just
frustrating.
I have believed for some time that the Atlantean Empire, whatever, was a coastal empire.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were terribly technologically advanced. I think most of their sailing was along the coasts, like our European ancestors didn't want to sail out past the side of land. So
I think they knew more than you're thinking they did, because they used compasses, they used points, and they kept all that technology from the Greeks and Romans because they didn't want to share it. They didn't want them to have the ability to travel. At one point, they came up through the Gulf of Mexico, went up the Mississippi, and that's where you get the mound builders that were in like the St. Louis area. And then they got ran out basically after, I don't know, hundreds, maybe 1,000 years, got pushed back down towards Mexico. And that's where you end up with the Incan Empire, the Aztecs, and things like that. And that's why you see such a uniformity in the pyramids.
Right.
In North, South America, you've got pyramids all over the world that mimic each other. And there's a common ground there. That's not just something that happened.
That's what I was saying. You can actually get around most of the world by just sailing along coastlines.
You can, yeah. And if you cut right up those big tributaries and stuff, in the big rivers, absolutely.
And there are linguistic links that link ancient Japan with the Basque region in Europe. Their languages are recognizable to one another.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool.
They share many words. That is almost as far away from each other as you can possibly get on the globe.
Yes.
So we know somebody was getting around somehow.
Absolutely.
So if they could get to the other side of the world, why not to America?
Yeah.
And I ran across that, where we're talking about that cataclysmic event. It says the destruction and terror caused by this phenomenon broke up the commerce and all intercourse between Europe and America. The Eastern Atlantes thought the whole American continent had sunk like Atlantis and many Annaland islands. Thus, the Atlantes of interior America became separated from the Atlantic Empire. So that's where that separation came.
Absolutely. If that big of a cataclysm happened, and we know that it did because history records it all over the world, all sorts of upheavals and
there's
floods.
Geologic evidence of it too.
There's geological evidence. So it disrupted everything.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason the European and African nations were able to piece anything together is because they were on the same piece of land.
If you look at the world back then, and if you think as just a a parallel thing. If you think about the World Wide Web now, the internet, it's everywhere. You can talk to anyone anywhere. And if you kind of liken that to sailing and exploring and, doing all these different things, think about what would happen today if something happened to the internet.
Yeah.
We would lose contact all over the world, and we would come within ourselves again, a lot like we used to be.
When all the ships were destroyed, nobody could talk.
Mm-hmm. And so if you look at it kind of like a parallel of that, what if something happened and knocked out the internet, and we couldn't just talk to our family in Europe anymore as easily, and we don't know what happened to them. We're not going to know what happened to them for a while because we can't get there for a very long time, if you have to
I've
go
lost track to the people I graduated high school with, and I can call them anytime.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just think how much harder that's going to be when the only way to get there is a ship and nobody has the ships anymore.
Right. But if you look at that and you look at this cataclysmic event that happened, so let's liken that to the internet going out. Well, if that happens, you don't know if anybody's left. You don't know that your line of communication's cut. And that's kind of where I'm getting with that in a long roundabout way was,
practically speaking, those people no longer exist because you can no longer access them.
Exactly. You're
From a practical standpoint.
Yeah, you're going to lose track of them. You're going to lose track of what they're doing, commerce with them, because there's no line of communication there at this time or at that time. So, they were like, yeah, we don't know what happened to them. We assume they sank because that's what they were told.
Right. I mean, that's what happened to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
There's proof that there's cities out there off the coasts of Europe that,
oh yeah, tons.
I mean, you can't really access.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence has been seen. Well, hell, what is it? Alexandria? Not Alexandria. Anyway, the island that Cleopatra lived on, it's underwater. There was an earthquake. It's underwater.
They know where it's at.
And they know exactly where it's at.
Yeah. They can see what remains of it. They just can't do anything about it.
If you're building most of your civilization on the coast and something happens, huge earthquakes or what have you that cause flooding and stuff all over the world, tsunamis. Just say there was huge earthquakes all over the world and tsunamis wiped out all the coasts, which is actually very plausible. So all your trading posts are gone. All your ship captains are gone. All the evidence of you were even there wiped away. Water is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. Water
and what isn't wiped away,
anything.
Maybe not everybody was wiped away. There's small, factions of people left. They're not going to have, if you have people that specialize in certain things like we do now. We have engineers, we have what else, bakers, we have all these different specializations. Not one person knows everything. You're going to lose a lot of that information,
especially like I said, if you're a coastal civilization, if you're a coastal empire. All your cities are on the coast, so all your people of any consequence are in these areas that, are going to get wiped out. You're going to have little pockets where some of the knowledge is, but all your libraries, all your stuff is going to be in these big cities, and they get wiped out. It's like what happens when they wipe the internet out. Right now, I have the content to almost all the information mankind knows right now that I carry around in my pocket. What happens when the servers go?
It's not there anymore.
I can't access crap.
What's up, Willie?
Hey, Willie.
I was
about a good-looking guy right there.
Yeah, I know it. I was going to touch on that too. Your analogy with the internet going down. How many economies would collapse? I mean, what kind of economic
every economy
disaster would that be?
Look at, just within the last 20 years. Look at how much we've come to depend on the internet for so many things.
And economic collapse could be just as devastating as a physical one.
Yeah.
I mean, they say if we had an EMP here in the United States, it wouldn't be the EMP or the explosions that killed people. it would be the panic, it would
Yep.
be the starvation.
Hmm.
And within 6 months, our own government studies say that over half the people in the United States would be dead
Yep.
just from a single
Willie's-
EMP.
Yeah, Willie said that's why we have Google now, Mark. It only tells me the truth.
Well, Google actually
Bonjour,
published
Will.
this book for us, so I mean, maybe they do.
No.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, that and I think that's a great analogy, Pam, is the whole internet thing. And I think this topic tonight, I've just been listening. Like I said, I'm not well versed in it. I didn't get a lot of reading done, and it's hard to find anything. I mean, I even tried to look on YouTube real quick just to try to get a
It
good
is.
synopsis.
Really
There's nothing there.
We're going to be one of the first things on YouTube to cover this, if not the first. This show.
But this kind of resets the paradigm for me. You know, because you're thinking Plato, like Mark, you talked about earlier. You're thinking a Greek style civilization, but it makes sense. I mean, like I said, you know, you think Greek because it's Plato, and if it happened thousands of years before,
Hmm.
the Greeks were even really around. They were city states, probably fighting each other,
Hmm.
But the Egyptians were there.
but the Egyptians were there.
But
So
they
I
claimed to
mean,
be a colony.
yeah,
So, and we know that there are ruins in the Sahara that nobody's ever explored. You can
right.
see outlines of cities that are no longer from Google Maps. I mean, there's people who comb over Google Maps looking for these things and marking them, and they've not been discovered. A few Bedouins may have checked out some stuff, but that's about it.
And you come into the Amazon forests and things, you know, they're finding lost places daily, lost huge cities. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember how many they're up to now. It's a ridiculous amount that are just they've been overgrown by the forest. The rainforest has taken them back over. And to know that all those people were there and we've lost all that information. But if you think about it, if you really think about it, I mean, 20 years is basically a generation. A generation, or it takes a generation or two to lose so much information or to rework, you know, because our memories as human beings are really short.
Yep.
And it's a very small amount of time that storylines can absolutely be changed and no one's the wiser.
Yeah, I mean, verbal history can get way
Yep.
out of whack.
Yep.
All of
Willie,
a sudden, the ability to build giant buildings is paranormal and not just.
Mhm. And they're just
Right.
now finding out who what were they talking about? Was it the Roman cement or something? They're just now learning what makes it what is in it that has made it last so long. And I can't for the life of me remember what it
Volcanic
was
ash.
from my head. But they've just found it because when it cracks and then it gets wet, it reseals itself. And that's what's making it last so long. That's why there's so many Roman buildings around still.
Mhm.
What did Willie say?
Well, Willie said, "Who taught the Egyptians?" Like you're
It's a good
saying, Mark, we all
question.
have the evidence from LiDAR, but we're not allowed to go over there and begin anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
It's the
You can't
star
touch it.
people.
You know what?
Oh, really quick before I forget, you guys are talking about disappearing stuff and reappearing things. Did you all catch the Easter egg on page 16 of the Annals of Kentucky?
I did not, but I'm looking.
Towards
I'll
the bottom
scroll
of the
down.
page, there's a fun little Easter egg, especially for you, Pam and Mark.
Ooh. Towards the bottom.
Okay, well, I've got most of that highlighted. So,
Mm-hmm.
the Mohican Revolution.
Nope.
Oh,
You guys are gonna kick yourselves.
Like socks in a dryer, two go in. The one of the best
Right.
comes out.
right. Page 16
Let
of
me,
the book, or page 16 on the PDF.
On the book. So I'll just read a little bit. The Azores were visited as well as Madeira, but not peopled owing to their active volcanoes. But the Canary or Hesperide Islands
Oh,
were.
There we go. I missed it. Darn it. Good
yeah.
catch. Yes.
Apparently, during the 4th period, when she was writing about here, the Hesperides were in existence again.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Y'all
Totally
didn't catch
missed
that?
that.
I am disappointed. I am
I am
disappointed in you.
disappointed.
Somewhere,
We're bad people.
Rosemary Island Guiley
Revoke my
just gave me
research
a double
card.
thumbs up.
Oh, good catch.
Mhm.
Yeah, you definitely got a double thumbs up on
Uh-huh.
that. I completely missed
Yep.
that.
For all those naysayers that keep saying the Hesperides didn't exist, well, there's another mention
And there
of
it
them.
is right there.
Right
How
there,
cool is
right off the
that?
coast of the Canaries.
And I've
Mhm.
never seen this Annals of Kentucky anywhere in regards to Hesperides mentioned. Have you?
Yep. The
And other
Hesperides
stuff.
right there.
Mhm.
That's
Right
crazy.
there. Yep. Sure
Maybe
enough.
it's reverse. Maybe it's reverse Mandela.
Maybe it is.
Right?
I actually, I got so excited. I didn't get to read it until earlier in the week.
Willie, hashtag fake news.
Really? Yeah, I about jumped off the couch when I found it. I was just, I
That is
had
so
skimmed
cool.
through it before. The parts that I
read
knew
it twice
contained
now.
the stuff that we were really interested in. And then I decided to sit down and just read through it because you never know what you're going to
Mhm.
find. And I was just reading along and Hesperides, and I was like, what? Hesperides? I went back and
totally
looked
missed
and was like,
that.
holy
I
cow.
read over it 5 times after
Yeah.
you pointed it out.
That's crazy. That is cool.
Mhm. There you go.
Willie, we have the best islands. Huge, I tell you. Some would say the best islands ever.
Yes, Will, your islands are very huge.
That sounded kind of naughty.
I know, I meant for it too.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to, Will's got a big ego. We gotta.
Is that what they're calling it these days?
Yeah, I don't know nothing about that.
But he's got an epic beard, so it's okay.
That he does.
He does.
So sorry
I wanted
about
to
taking
ask
us
him
off topic.
No,
It's okay.
that's
It's
not
part of
off
it.
if he'd
topic.
seen his
That's
if he'd
amazing.
seen his cousin Gimli lately. I'm
Very
waiting
cool.
for the comment. No. But it's totally fascinating that all this stuff that's just laying out there waiting for us to rediscover.
Mhm.
It's been hidden.
Well, and they talk about in here that where is it? It may almost be said of these two empires, as was said of Cortez in Mexico by an eminent historian, that they destroyed civilizations better than their own. It may be added that they probably destroyed literature at the same time, nearly as valuable as their own. So, that and history is truly written by the victor.
It is.
Yep.
It absolutely is. We see it today.
Yes, all the time. And
And we see people trying to rewrite history so they can be the victor.
yes.
Yep.
And how much knowledge has been lost? Way more than what we have, I'm sure. I mean,
Just since the Library at Alexandria.
Yep.
I mean,
yes, that
and
still makes me sad to think about.
and that's probably a drop. If the Atlant Empire was as big as they're saying, think how much information their library had.
Yes, but
Think
I
how
mean,
much was lost. There's evidence that they visited the entire world in their tiny little cockle shell ships.
I'll be right back, guys.
How much did they collect? How much got lost?
you know what's exciting? I don't know if you guys follow like archaeology in regards to Pompeii and things like that, but they basically found a Pompeian library. And of course, all of the scrolls and things were reduced to ash, but they're still in their form. And they are working on figuring out how to decipher those. And if they can do that, that's going to be incredible.
It'll be huge.
Yeah, I'm excited just to even think about what information that they're going to find in that.
It's probably
I'm
not
always-
as good as
I'm
you
over
think.
here
It's
like-
probably like
Oh.
somebody's journal entry that says, today we decided to move by this
Probably.
giant volcano. It's so pretty here. We can't wait to settle in.
Yeah.
Well, remember,
probably
we're
right.
we're
Yeah.
talking Romans. It's probably porn.
Oh yeah, they've found a lot of porn on the walls in Herculaneum.
They really do. I
And
mean, I'm not
Pompeii.
gonna lie.
Yeah.
They were
It was
bad.
probably porn
they were bad for sure.
because they're humans. They were just as debauched as we were. Only
Ugh.
they were more open about it.
They were very, very open about it.
So
Really.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they knew debauchery. Like I know my cousin.
It may be a whole sorted library too. With our luck, it'll be something really crazy and not historically significant.
I don't know.
I
It
did
might
find
be.
this portion on here. I'm getting off that subject, going a different direction. I found that the part that talks about Plato's sources says he does not pretend to give us a fabulous account of something of his own invention, but a fragment of the history of
Thanks,
the
Willie.
Athenians in their earliest heroic age, learned and written from the records of the Egyptians by Solon, his kin, 600 years before the Christian era, and preserved until Plato's day, and then in his possession. If it was a story of Plato's invention, having foundation only in his imagination, how came he to so correctly describe the great Atlantic Ocean and the islands outlying in it, especially in the West Indies? And then it goes on to talk about, let's see, Thesmopompus, and I'm probably absolutely butchering these names. If you guys know a better way to say them, let me know. He was a contemporary of Plato, but he related an interview between Midas, the king of Phrygia,
Phrygia, yeah.
and Silenus,
Sounds
in the
good.
latter, sound good? In which the latter made mention of a continent beyond the Atlantic Ocean, larger than Asia Minor, Europe, and Libya combined, and that a race of people called the Meropes dwelt there in many cities and towns. And then 2,000 years ago, Timagenes, the Roman historian, writing of the people who dwelt most anciently in Gaul, mentions them as first the indigenous population, which I suppose to be the Mongoloids, who had long lived in Europe, and two, the invaders from a distant land, which I understood to be the Atlantes, and third, the Aryan Gauls. And we were talking before we started this, and I don't think we discussed it, but I also ran across a book, and if I did, sorry, I'm repeating myself if I did. It's called Cherokee DNA Studies by Donald Yates, who is a DNA specialist. He's a scientist. Chapter 5, page 73. The Asiatic groups and East Mediterranean groups, all with impeccable credentials, have come across in DNA studies from the Cherokee. And that's 10 years worth of Cherokee studies. So that's really cool.
So
And,
yeah, I mean,
the stuff's suppressed, and it really pisses off the actual scientists like Donald Yates and some of these other guys when what they find doesn't align prettily with what is accepted history, and it gets shoved to the side and they don't talk about it. But this book was written in 1824,
right?
and here all these years later we have reference to something that wasn't available in 1824 when they're saying, we thought it was Mongoloids. What was that, 2,000 years before this was even written? They thought it was Mongoloids, which we're showing there is Asiatic groups showing up in the Cherokee DNA.
Yeah, I mean, the only way this would get ridiculed and hidden worse if we said it was Bigfoot.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I was any kind of scientist, we would have just destroyed my career just by having this conversation.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. None of
But,
us can run for public office.
How many of those people have looked at this I'm going, I really want to study this, but I
Mhm.
don't want to lose all my grant money.
Yeah, or they have studied it quietly and silently and can't bring forth what they found because it doesn't align, with what will save their jobs.
Because some of the most vicious people in the world are so-called peaceful academics.
Yep.
Hmm.
They're nasty. They're just like everybody else. They just more schmancy about it.
Now,
I have a book for you,
Diodorus
Pam.
Siculus. Is that the Cherokee book? Is that what you pulled? Yes.
Can
What
you
did
see
you
it?
find in there? Yes.
I've only actually made it about halfway through. You can see my really, it is extensive. It is thick. So since you're digging in on this right now, I may hand this over to you for a while.
I think I
'Cause
have
Lord
a
knows
copy
I'm
of
not
it,
close to
actually.
it. Oh,
I
do
may have a
you?
copy. I think you gave me a copy of it, honestly.
Oh, I might have.
You might have. I think you did. And I haven't got to it because I haven't. I should now for sure.
Since you're on this roll here.
I know, and I'm like so excited. And I know, like you said, it's not hugely paranormal, but it kind of is, because
It's
what we're going to find out the
really-
further we go is where no,
Dog people.
what? I've
Dog
never heard
people.
that.
What?
What?
Is that dog people as in like dog man, I wonder?
Or were they
this
just like race of people that really like dogs?
dog-headed humanoids, are they
Ooh,
perhaps Anubises? And
how
jackal-headed?
strange. Maybe
Wouldn't it be a new buy?
Anubi,
Anubi.
yes.
a newbie.
Anubi.
Newbies.
That sounds a little dirty.
Anubises.
Newbies?
Anubises.
Anubises.
Newbasses?
That's crazy. I've never heard that one.
Nubasses.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one either.
Maybe it was the Anunnaki.
I want to get into that too. And that will go into this series pretty
It will
easily,
go right
because
into this.
we've got all kinds of stuff on the book of Enoch and
Mhm.
the Anunnaki and the
Which goes
Nephilim.
into the star people. And
Right.
yes.
I mean, these giants.
Mhm.
So, and who's to
Maybe
say
that's
that?
what's wrong with me. I have A negative blood.
Maybe so. That could be. But I mean, I've postulated that maybe they weren't all that advanced. Maybe they were, because the Ice Age, those glaciers would have ground any evidence of a super advanced civilization into literal dust.
Yep.
And then if they started to rebuild and they were in the wooden ship phase, and then we had tsunamis all over the world because of, tectonic
Sinus-
shifting or whatever, then
Okay, Willie, you're sending me down a rabbit hole. I'm going to be digging on this.
then you would have a double whammy. The ice ages destroy the technological civilization, the remnants start to rebuild, and then they're wiped out by tsunamis.
Yeah,
mean-
and it would just push them back even further. They're finally making their way back, and then this happens, and it knocks them even further back.
So any records of that civilization would have
Yeah.
been lost when this civilization got destroyed.
Absolutely. And the only thing that's really going to survive is anything that's in stone,
Right.
or in
And
crystals.
that's what we have. We have
Ooh,
megalithic sites all over the world.
could this get us into the crystal skulls finally?
Maybe.
Possibly.
I'm fascinated with them.
I almost bought a crystal skull from Indiana Jones on Amazon the other day of the alien eyes.
Awesome.
I really I was going.
I'm so interested in that because, when you think about the fact that that's one thing that, we put information on now when we write to hard
Quartz
drive,
crystal.
anything like that.
Our computers, everything, the servers that we're on, the phones that you're watching this show on,
Hmm.
quartz crystal
And so
makes it
much
all work.
information can be stored on just one very small, minute piece. Yes. Could you imagine how much could be stored on if there was a way to store it into a skull like that?
There's
Doesn't that
32
kind of
gig on this card.
that's
I
crazy?
mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of info. It's tiny.
And it's teeny tiny.
When you start talking holographic data storage on a quartz crystal,
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
how much
Yeah.
could be in one of those?
I've got a micro SD with 128 gig.
Yeah. And look how small that is. It's like fingernail
Yeah.
size.
I think you can get terabyte drives on those.
Wow.
Probably.
Yeah.
And
So,
just a few years ago, terabyte drives were like at least this big. And we make this sound like that's so huge,
mark
Right.
my words, and I've written it into one of my books. Mark my words, someday we will be able to carry a 10 terabyte hard drive on something that will fit in
Yeah.
your wallet.
Well,
My very first computer that I got, it had 2 gigs of memory in it. And this was in 1998.
Yeah.
And they
We'll be
told
carrying
me I
around.
would never in 100 years fill up that 2 gigs. There was
Yeah.
no way I would ever fill that.
We'll be carrying around 10 gig.
Yes, Willie, they were.
10
They did that
terabyte.
computers. There's
10
no
terabyte cards.
there's no tooling marks on them at all.
I don't doubt that. Going back to our show Monday, we were talking the technological revolution and AI stuff like that, and we touched on Ray Kurzweil. One thing that wasn't in that little deal I showed about him, he was talking about we'll have our phones. The phones will be so small they'll be the size of a blood cell.
Wow.
So we're talking nanotech there.
Yeah, it won't be long. Won't be
One
long.
of my-
What happens during a cataclysm? What happens during an ice age?
Yes. Ooh,
All that
that's a
stuff
good
just
point, Willie.
turns into sand.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, well,
That
that makes
is
it really said
actually-
almost like they were 3D printed.
Yeah.
That
The
is,
the skulls lacking tooling marks, things like that.
That's
damn it, Willie. Now I will not be able to sleep tonight because I'll be thinking about that.
I've been telling them I want to do something on the crystal skulls for a long time. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
I think it'll fit right into this little series we're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any technological civilization that stored its stuff on silicone, that's all gone. That's sand. Even if any data still exists, it's just sand. How are you going to know?
I'm sure.
The glaciers
think
have
so,
done their
Willie.
job.
Willie said, I think they'll just be infused in us at that point, right? As far as the phones, I think
yeah.
so. I mean, the size of a blood cell. I mean, again, I think when I think about that, I think, like I said, nanotech.
Mhm.
How much nanotech could you get in a syringe? And then the designs and stuff they're talking about self-replicating.
When they can get a phone as small as a blood cell, they will be able to basically make immortality a thing. They'll be able to rebuild your body from the inside out with all these teeny tiny machines and make you think whatever they want you to think.
Yeah.
Okay, so back when vampires were all the craze when it came to supernatural books, fiction books, there's an author, her name's Lindsay Sands, and she wrote, and she's actually still writing the series, The Argano Vampires. And what her premise was, or her way that she made the vampires come about, is actually kind of brilliant, because she said that they were the lost race of the Atlantans, basically. And that what had happened was they had advanced to the point where they had nanotechnology, and they had put it in their veins, and it went through and it would constantly fix any part of your body that was starting to wear out. So it basically gave you immortality. But in her books, she made it to where you had to survive by getting blood transfusions. So that's where the vampire portion of her stuff came in. But just I grabbed onto the idea of the nanotechnology and the immortality that came along with that as a really fascinating thing. for her to tie into the Atlanteans. Obviously, it's fiction. Yeah, totally, 100%. But what a great storyline. What a great origin story.
I'm going to run down this real quick. Willie's got a few comments that
They're good.
they're pretty good comments. He says, once that switch is flipped, talking about the nanobots, things like that. And I know this is way off topic, but once the switch is flipped, there's no coming back. You'll be 100% be a less efficient human being if you do not have Neuralink hooked up like everyone else with all access to the world's information. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. And we've kind of touched on that, at least in conversation. I know Mark and I have. Says, think about how less of an effective human being you currently are if you don't have the technology available to you to research something before you take on a task or just want to research something. Yes, I know Mark and I have talked about that, because who remembers phone numbers anymore?
Yeah, I don't. If
in
my
general,
phone
it'll be
doesn't have it,
over-
I don't have it.
Yeah.
Well,
It will be over the day that happens, because we'll be 100% have to fuse with AI and technology, or be left in the past as a relic of what was humanity.
Look at how we research now. We'll throw out a topic just a few days in advance, and we all start digging on it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for our ability to access all this information almost instantaneously, we would not be effective as researchers at all.
All right.
I'm
not that effective anyway. I tell people I have ADD, the internet, and reasonably good research skills. I don't know nothing other than that.
I think
I got good connections. I can hook you up.
I think the internet, I think, has made us lazy. I'm not going to say less educated.
Mm-hmm.
It's made us lazy. We depend on it so much. And again, it goes back to that conversation. What happens if the internet goes down? You were talking about the internet and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said, except for maybe Jess. She has folders and binders.
Heck yeah. Jess will forever be right there. We've got a library going.
But there's something to.
Yeah, we do.
I think there's something to writing, like in your folders, binders, and all that. Yeah. For me, if I'm writing something out, I retain it better than just sitting there reading it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't read a lot of paper books. I don't really even read a lot of digital books. But I listen to a lot of Audible books. But I hear there's something to the tactile turning of the page and feeling the books compared to reading on a digital reader.
Oh,
There
yeah.
So, I mean,
I do
I don't
both.
know from experience.
I do
I am a
both, but
Kindle
I would
Unlimited
not.
guy.
I would not count on a digital copy of a book if I can help it. I want the paper versions way better.
When we talk about that on the preparedness end of this show, as well, a lot. I love Kindle because I have access to everything, and I can read it on my lunch break. But the smell of a book, the feel of a book in my hand, the ability to trace my finger down the words, it's something magical, really.
We're big nerds. That's one of the first things we do if we're around the old books. Jennifer's in that too with us. We just have to smell it.
My favorite thing, and nobody ever talks about it, everybody talks about the smell. My favorite thing about an old book is that when you open it and it's a well-worn, well-loved book, and hopefully somebody had it long before you too, you know where everybody's favorite pages are, because that's right where it flops open to. You will always know where your favorite part in that book is, because that is just where it's been creased all the hell. That's my favorite part about old books. Or when I get a brand new book for me, but it's an old book and it's been previously owned, the first thing I like to do is flip through it, because you'll know right where their favorite pages were.
Which is usually the best part anyway.
Exactly. It's like you get a little peek into somebody else's thoughts on your new book.
Yeah.
I actually just got in a old copy of a book today. I haven't even opened it up yet. It's Supernature, an unprecedented look at strange phenomena and their places in nature.
Yep.
I'm excited.
Here's a good point. Willie makes here. He says, "What about this? Is there even the slightest chance that we can one day put ourselves into a digital world to exist in? If you think yes, is it possible that the crystal skulls hold previous civilizations that simply put themselves into that for holding?"
So they uploaded
So
themselves. That's
Ooh.
basically,
interesting.
they're just
So what if the
asleep until we
world
apply
became a place they
electricity.
couldn't survive in? That is
Right.
not a
Yeah.
stretch, honestly.
Yeah. And he
What if
says,
the
"I know
world
it's a stretch."
became unfriendly, to where we couldn't
Totally buy
survive in
it.
it, but you could upload
Yeah.
your
That's
Willie.
interesting because again, I mean, is it serendipitous that we talked about the tech revolution
It really
Monday,
is. I was not going for
and
that.
and now this is kind of tying into that
It's
because
tying in.
again, Ray Kurzweil talked about uploading your consciousness, all that. There's people pushing for that.
There's a show. It's either on Netflix or Hulu or something, and it's called. Is it Uploaded or something like that? That is that premise where you can upload yourself
I
when
can't
you're
remember what that's
getting
called,
ready
but
to die.
and have you seen the one that they got the little deal and you can just change bodies and stuff?
Yeah, that's now it escapes me. But Alicia said old books smell the best.
They do.
Yes.
They do.
And Willie's like, and that's why they made it through different cataclysm.
Mm-hmm.
Because there
That's
wouldn't have been enough
interesting.
room to save everyone unless they were uploaded. Wow, that's
That's
pretty
crazy.
cool to think about.
Maybe.
That's wow, far out.
And he said, yes,
Ew.
uploaded on Amazon.
So I wonder if that's who Loab is trying to come through. Ooh,
Blah.
Loab is creepy.
Loab's creepy.
What
That-
if here's something to add to that? What if, like Willie was saying, this is that previous civilization, they knew this cataclysm was coming and they were able to upload their civilization into these crystal skulls. And they have to wait until civilization rises back up again to get technologically advanced enough to access that.
To them, they would just have gone to sleep and 100,000 years is gone.
Okay, so what if their uploaded status is just basically not in a parallel universe, but just basically existing beside us? What if the upload is there? You know how they talk about the human conscious, how we all can
Yes.
losing the words. You know what I'm talking about? How we can all plug
Gestalt.
in, basically. And that's how that's some of the explanation. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
That's kind of the explanation of how psychics can glean all this information is they're just have a better connection to the overall upload of the human consciousness as a whole.
Talked about that on our near-death experience show a year or two ago.
Tim Smith said, were you talking about the Ghost in the Shell? I mean, it kind of sounds like it.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
But, I don't know.
Well,
That's a pretty good
we
theory.
took a left turn off of Atlanta, Adeland, didn't we?
Did we?
We'll get back.
I mean, did we?
Not. You got a point. You got a point. We kind of did, but
it's all connected.
That's
all
right.
connected.
It is. It really is.
We were talking about Atlantis, and I managed to fit Mothman in there.
Hey.
That's true. That's pretty
It's all
impressive.
connected.
That's
That's
It
right.
is.
Speaking of, and something that we didn't
You're
bring up,
welcome.
and I know we brought it up before, but Chief, is it Cornsilk or Cornstalk? Cornstalk. Chief Cornstalk.
Cornstarch? I don't know.
Cornstarch. I called him Red Corn earlier, and that's actually a chief out of Pahuska that wrote a Tragedies of the Osage Hills or was in on it, one or the other.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Mark. Willie says, or they were just really cool tablecloth weights.
You
They
never
were
know.
really cool because I almost
know.
bought one on Amazon.
That makes me
Almost.
think
I mean,
of,
They really like picnics, but it was
you remember
windy.
the cat Orion on Men in Black, and that whole universe was in his little charm on his necklace. It's corn.
It's corn. All
Boo.
all about
You
it.
have pictures, Willie?
That's funny. That's the cutest little boy. Oh my gosh. Now that song stuck in my head, Willie. But this brings us back around. talking about the chief is, if you have not seen Hellier, you guys need to watch it.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube and it's on Amazon Prime, both. It's definitely worth a watch for
Yeah.
sure.
It for multiple aspects.
Mm-hmm. And even, I do watch Ancient Aliens. Do I take everything that they say as 100%? No, but where else are we going to find as laymen some of the information that just isn't presented to anyone outside of the academic fields?
Right.
You
And
know.
some of it's
But-
probably just
You
bullshit.
can kind of tell some of it's a little bit hokey,
And-
but
but there's a grain of truth behind
exactly.
a lot of
And
it.
there's enough there that makes me want to dig further in a lot of this stuff.
And there's a
that's
lot of it that really makes sense to the stuff that we've been looking at lately with the
Mhm.
ancient annals Kentucky and all this other stuff. I want to get a nice paper copy of this
Mhm.
because
I'd give you mine, but I've completely.
I saw that. Well, my digital copy looks almost as good.
That's funny.
Mark, was it you and I that were I can't remember who I was talking to. We were kind of talking religion. And this even touches on it, talking about Noah and all that. Well, ancient Sumerians have the same story,
Hmm.
and that's kind of where the Hebrew gets it, and then transfer from the Torah to the Bible, but also you have the Hindu, then you have the Buddhist, and it's all the same story.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's kind of shifting my paradigm some, my thought
Are we all
process.
talking about the same God with just a different name?
Mhm.
Because
Right? I
I-
he's
mean,
got a bunch of names.
I am of the personal belief that there are a lot of different paths to the same thing. And, there's so many of the origin stories of the different religions that parallel. I mean,
Yeah.
they,
They do.
you've got the virgin birth in a lot of them. You've got so many different things that are there. And, the flood is a big one.
Yep.
Hear me out. We've got a worldwide civilization
Mhm.
with trade and whatnot. Civilization falls, and all they've got is their oral traditions. Those oral traditions are going to follow the same paths,
Mhm.
but the names are all going to be changed, and everything's going to change, but still be the same.
Yes. And that's
So
pretty much what's happened, honestly, I think, personally.
it
I know
makes
everybody
sense.
feels that way, and I respect
Right.
anyone's religion. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not knocking. I mean,
No.
I guess for me, it's the question.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
how, and I think this conversation came around with the Catholic Church. I can't remember who I was talking to about how much they're hiding or seem to be hiding. And I'm not making accusations. I mean, just what it seems
The
like.
Vatican is
Um,
famous for
the book of Jasher, the book of Enoch, they're all taken out.
Mhm.
But that was the Catholic Church that did that.
Mhm.
And there's so much difference in those books. And Enoch was a biblical figure. I mean, it
Mhm.
was what, Methuselah's father, something like that.
Yeah.
No ways.
But he talks about the Nephilim, the giants,
Mhm.
the Watchers, which I would love to do a deep dive on the Watchers, but it's hard to find any information on them.
There's a book I have been on the hunt for about 3 years now, and I have not been able to secure a copy of it yet, but I'm going to.
She will.
It's out
She is
there.
tenacious. She's like a bulldog when it comes to books.
I will not let this one go.
But
And I
see,
can't get a copy. They're like $500 a copy, so I can't
Oh,
do it.
wow.
Yeah, but I know I will find one somewhere,
she
and I
will.
will not
She will.
pay that much money for it because, number one, I know it's not going to the author, and that doesn't mean I'm downloading it somewhere for free. It just means that somebody's got one somewhere that surely will share it.
Right?
I don't. Yeah.
But again, we've talked about how, and I know we've talked about it several times on the show, but we've talked about how mainstream science poo-poos all these different ideas.
Mhm.
That's got to originate somewhere. did that originate then? Did that originate from the church? Did that originate? I mean,
I think a lot of it does.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, to me, it's about control.
It is control. That is a very, very perfect word for it, because I think a lot of it has come from academics that don't want to be proven wrong. It's ego. A lot of it is ego.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who has a lot of experience with dealing with some academics in the past, they tend to be very arrogant. It's their way or the highway. They're right, you're wrong. And I met one guy who basically thought when I was in college, and unfortunately I didn't have his class, he basically felt like his students should basically worship him because he was all knowing and all powerful. It was just a freaking community college. There's no reason, if you're a community college professor, there's no reason for you to be that arrogant. Yet he was.
And look how many of them are, even in the community colleges. And I'm not going to name names, but there are some, not in our area, but in the state of Kansas, I'll say that much, in the state of Oklahoma, that act that way. When, look, just right there in Ark City, they found one of the largest Native American settlements that nobody knew about, and it was right there, but
And if you would have asked anybody 10 years ago about it, they would have told you were an idiot and uneducated
they'll
and
never
just needed to shut up.
Yes.
Is it me? But in the last, I don't know, I'll say 10 years. But it seems like to me there's been more discoveries that counter the narrative.
Yeah. And that's
it seems like almost every day,
because everybody can access it.
Yes, yep. That's what I was going to say. We have more free access to this stuff. And that's not something that has been as nearly as possible in the past. And do we have it all? No, we don't. And there's a lot of things that we are not going to have access to if we are not in that community, in that scholarly community, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
The internet has given people around the world a great deal of power, the power to do their own research and find their own facts. And that is why you've seen such a movement in the last few years to absolutely put a lid on that so they can regain control of the narrative. They do not want you thinking for yourself, doing your own research, or being smarter than them.
Well, look at the implications. Honestly, if we come down and say, okay, we have absolute 100% irrevocable proof Vikings were here, then who does that make that found the Americas? Who found it? It definitely wasn't Christopher Columbus. We know that, obviously.
Right.
That's been definitely proven. But if it's proven for a fact that somebody else did, then who does that retroact that initial claim to?
A lot of really arrogant people look like the total asses that they really are.
Not even that. You're looking at, so who should actually have been able to claim the Americas when it was claimed, which it should have never been, but it was Scandinavia? Is that who should have claimed it and not Europe?
It was,
you're gonna upset a whole bee's nest of crazy political, and that's what it could happen real easily. And I honestly think that may be part of what plays into the reasoning behind the fact that some of this will never be brought up.
I think a lot of it just really does boil down to arrogance. There are a lot of people who, just because they are better educated than you, think they're smarter than you, and they don't like to be proven otherwise. I had somebody found out that I had an IQ of 135 and flipped their shit. Why are you a janitor? Because I have no ambition. That's the answer. I have no ambition. I'll admit that on the interwebs. But
Beyond
just
the
because I'm
ego
not as
trip.
educated doesn't mean I'm dumber.
Oh, not at all.
Beyond a basic ego trip and how dare you say I'm wrong, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of these scholars and like-minded people have spent a good portion of their life
And money.
studying these different topics with an underlying fact, which is now being flipped over. And ego aside, I think it would be very hard for your entire narrative to change like that. And the first thing you're going to want to do is put up a wall and say, no, that can't be, that's wrong.
Mhm.
Because then
That's not what I
you've
was taught.
just wasted
Yeah, your
wasted
whole
a
life
good
was,
portion of your life
yeah, your whole life was,
studying and putting everything towards this one narrative that you have just been told is completely wrong. And I don't
Mhm.
care how good of a person you are, you're going to fight it at first. You're going to be like,
Yeah.
hell
Yep.
no. That's
Well, I mean, that is human
first time
nature.
experiencers
Humans
first time
suck.
experiencers of the paranormal will more often than not tell you that that never happened. No, or they'll play it off because it's changing their life narrative. They've grown up thinking that ghosts aren't real and that the paranormal is fake and it's all just ridiculousness. And then something, bam, happens right in front of them. And the first thing they're going to do is say, oh no,
Yeah.
my eyes were playing tricks on me. I
That's
was
not what that
tired.
was.
I haven't got enough sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It must have been
Yeah,
that new
it's the same
prescription from the
thing.
doctor.
I would like to think that I would be open-minded enough if somebody came and if I was like this big scholar or something, or, if somebody came and told me the basis of my studies was completely wrong, that I would have an open mind, but I know I'd sure as hell be pissed off for a while.
Yeah. Well, and
And I would try to dissuade them and I'd be like, that's not right. Because you've just undermined a good portion of their life. So
Yeah.
ego
Mhm.
aside, I think that's also a good part of it too. They
That's
have
a
all
very
these
good
people that
point.
they've spent their whole life on these topics, and then you just rip the rug out from underneath of them.
well,
Nobody wants that. So the easiest
a-
thing to do is just to push it aside and say you're wrong.
and I've lived it with my political viewpoint
Mhm.
because my political viewpoint has basically shifted to everybody sucks, and we need to tell them to
Yep.
go home. But there was a time where I would fight you on something. Now it's like, they both suck. Who cares?
Yeah.
I ain't gonna listen to none of them. So I get it, and you're right. But when you
I
start
guess
involving money, it gets even worse.
Yeah. I guess my thing is colleges, and I might have the equivalent of an associate's degree. Okay. But colleges are supposed to be an institution for higher thinking, for challenging your beliefs and opening your mind. When anymore, they're just a cesspool for indoctrination, seemingly.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I
that's
guess that's my problem with academia.
it's not about education anymore.
No, it's not.
It
About
all
the
came
almighty
crashing
dollar.
down when they quit teaching critical thinking.
Right.
They don't teach it anymore.
Look, I put it on.
Ah, nice, sir. Nice.
So
Yeah. But yeah, I feel absolutely sorry for those people. They need to be more like me. I'm extremely open-minded about all of this stuff. I have learned that one thing I think is true and a fact one day is going to be completely wrong the next because I'm going to tack something new onto it. And that is just the way of what this is that we're doing right here. If you don't have an open mind, you can't do this.
No, because everything that we are talking about now, it's going to take just one critical piece of evidence to turn us around and head us in a different direction.
Right.
And it happens all the time.
And what you're looking at, you're probably just seeing a small part of the bigger
We're seeing a
picture.
snapshot. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you can't base everything on a snippet.
No, you can't.
And
That's
you're
why
never
even
going to
after
find
the
it
show,
all.
we're not going to stop, looking into this. I definitely won't. I know Jess won't, and I'm sure none of us will.
Oh,
because-
we'll probably revisit this on a regular basis
Yeah.
over the next few
But
years.
like,
I mean,
it's all connected, and that's fine. That's how we do this. Like, look at the Hebrides Islands. It popped up in this, and good grief, who saw that coming? That's another. I haven't seen
I'm going to
that
have to
particular
really
article
dig into this
mentioned
text.
anywhere in regards to that. So that's fascinating because there it is. There's another little bit of proof that it was there. That people knew about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, we still have a lot more to cover just on this topic. Just looking here at the book, I mean, we barely even touched the book.
Oh, and that's why we decided to do this as a series, because we knew this was going to get out of hand.
I don't even think it started
got
yet.
excited.
We haven't even
Out of
got
hand.
started yet. It's going to get way out of hand.
I'm excited to see what direction we go next with it.
Yep.
What's the next bit going to be about?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at the world and look at all the theories of Atlantis, where it was it real? How many are out there, and how many people are 100% sure they're right? Thousands.
I don't know nothing.
There's tons.
The more I know, I don't know nothing.
Exactly.
Yep.
And if
We
we're
don't know,
talking
we don't
about
know.
a civilization that was destroyed by a cataclysm, possibly several, ain't nobody ever going to know nothing about it.
No, but what's interesting is the fact that there are ancient burials in and around Kentucky. There are ancient mounds all over the United States. And I got excited because for Christmas, I got Gloria Farley's book. She's based out of Oklahoma. She was the lady that realized that the Heavener runestone in Heavener, Oklahoma was actually runestones and not what they thought. They used to call it Indian rock because they thought it was Indian writing. And, that's how they worded it. But later determined that it was actually runes. It was actually runic script. And there's a lot of it through Oklahoma. There's some actually on Turkey Mountain in Tulsa. There was a rock found in the river. What's the river right there in Tulsa?
The Arkansas River?
Yes, the Arkansas
Yeah,
River.
Arkansas, yeah.
They found a pretty good sized rock out there that had a cow. And if I remember right, and I could be wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, Jess, was it like an Egyptian cow or something along those lines? Can't remember.
Yeah, it was something Egyptian.
Yeah.
And that
they
was
found.
really near where they found that Roman tool that went that disappeared at Oklahoma State.
And
Mm.
I believe the rock actually was taken from the two guys that found it, and it was not given back.
So there was an Egyptian hieroglyph with a Roman tool.
There's
right. It was within 100 yards of it. Yeah.
Yes. And actually in the panhandle of Oklahoma, there's a place called the Anubis Caves. And I think we've talked about that. Haven't we?
We're probably going to talk about that more in this series.
Yes.
I really believe that since the time of Atlantis, there has been a very small but steady traffic between North America and Europe and Asia.
Well, of course. They traded.
Go where the money is.
That's how they had the Egyptian
It
mummies
amazes me that people are... Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, and that's why there's Egyptian mummies with traces of cocaine.
Yeah.
Cocaine mummies. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll probably talk about that some more too.
And wasn't there, and I can't remember if this was true or not. Wasn't there Egyptian mummies found in the Grand Canyon? Or was that?
I think there was artifacts.
There was Egyptian
Yeah, I think there was some
artifacts.
artifacts.
They
Is that what
found
it
a
was?
cave
Okay.
full of writings and paintings and artifacts.
And
Yeah,
they had
and they
found
tell you now, but that never
Titans.
happened. That wasn't true. But that section of the Grand Canyon is named a Egyptian word now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wonder where that came
Here's a
from.
fun little nugget leading back to the Atlans in Kentucky. So when we first started watching Hellier and we started digging into the old Kentucky legends, which I'd never even heard of, I actually realized that they have a great deal to do with our area and down into Oklahoma. Those same Cherokees that we were talking about that they considered the old Atlans. Many of the tribes around there, of course, call them the old Atlans. That same group of Cherokee, before the Trail of Tears happened, they were pushed down into Pike County in Kentucky, which is Hellier.
Mhm.
That's where Hellier is. Roosted there for a while, and then they sent them down the Trail of Tears. Now, the Trail of Tears is actually dead nuts on one of the largest ley lines that goes through the continental US.
I
And it
remember you
goes
finding
right.
that.
Yeah, it goes right through Tahlequah,
Mhm.
through Tulsa, and it ends up in Roswell. Those Cherokee
Nice.
Indians
Wow.
that carried this old magic. Yeah, the Cherokees and the Shawnee and all that carry this old magic from the Atlans took it with them. And it is now residing in the Oklahoma area. A lot of the same stuff, the rock drawings and things like that, and the tales that followed those Kentucky Indians are the same here now. So it kind of followed that path. And I always wondered how the Trail of Tears followed that ley line so precisely. Dead
Hmm.
nuts on.
Mhm.
Straight shot, followed it to a T. How does that happen? Usually, if you're moving a large amount of people, you move them the easiest way that you can. So you don't go over mountains, you go around, and it doesn't matter if you're
Yeah,
taking them the longest hard way because you don't care if they die or not.
Right.
They didn't do that. They took them straight on this line.
that is
It's strange.
suspicious.
Mhm.
It's weird. I don't
It's almost
have a
like
reason for it, but
the they were guiding themselves along a source of their own power to try to preserve their own lives.
I don't know.
I mean, what would you do if you've got access to magic and you know that these people are trying to kill you by making you march? Would you try to use that magic to stay near your source of power so that everybody doesn't die?
I don't know.
It's just
How much-
speculation. The speculation is what makes this fun.
My question would be, how much ability did they have to lead that? You know what I mean?
To influence it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would say that it's if you've got some sort of power influencing the human mind, it's not that hard. You can do it with words. If you've got a little bit of power behind it, maybe. That's just speculation. I'm just throwing that out there.
Or if they befriended one of the leaders of the,
Yeah.
hey, if you go this way, it'll be a little easier, or it'll be easier on you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Who knows?
There's some old shaman on there going, well, this is the way we're going to go.
yeah, it
Don't
makes you wonder. I'm sorry if you can hear that. My heater kicked on. I just went and turned it off, but it's still it's getting ready to
It's
shift
fine.
down.
That's okay.
So I wonder if on the Trail of Tears, they lost a great many people on that from illness and just not capable of making the move. But you almost have to wonder, was it purposely done that way because it was almost weeding out the herd? Was it getting rid of the people who didn't have the right blood to make it?
I don't know. I mean, speculate. I mean, that's what
The
this
ones
whole
that end up
premise of
here
the
had
show
the
is about.
purest.
Maybe.
Oh, there it goes.
Interesting.
I don't.
don't
It
know.
could be.
Yeah,
I mean, the
that's just a shot in the
speculation.
dark. But did they?
We
Did the
can
ones
call
with the
the
purest
show a
blood
shot in
be
the
the ones
dark.
that
I
made
don't.
it? Yeah.
Honestly,
But I've always thought that was very interesting. Pam was actually with me when I figured that one out. I had just bought a map and I had a ruler out and I was kind of seeing where the ley lines fell and stuff. And when I realized that line from Hellier, Kentucky
Yeah.
went straight
Wow.
through
That was a crazy
That's
thing.
Tahlequah and into
that's
Roswell.
crazy.
And then I realized, holy hell, that's the Trail of Tears.
Mhm.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, again, if you guys are listening and you haven't watched Hellier, go watch Hellier and look at all the stuff that they
yeah, and all the
seen and what they
synchronicities that
experienced, all the
they ran into
synchronicities.
while they were doing it. And isn't there a Hellier 3 coming out soon, or is it already out?
It won't be soon. They're
It-
working on it now, but
Yeah.
they're doing it organically because this is they're filming as it develops. And
Yeah. It's happening in
so
real
it's-
time.
yes.
Right. So
They're filming it as they go. And I know that they've got, some episodes done already because they've talked about it. It's Greg and Dana Newkirk and they've talked about it. But they also said that it's not anywhere near being complete because it's like Jess said, it's in
just
real
keep
time.
happening. The synchronicities and all the
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. Even like just watch it for the fact that if you're interested in what we're talking about on this show, the Annals of Kentucky and the history and the times of Kentucky, their things that they're getting into in the Hillier area are totally touching base on all the
Mhm.
stuff that we've just been talking about. In fact,
Yep.
it was because of them that I realized that Chief Cornstalk had anything to do outside of the Mothman legacy,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. They were the ones that actually found the very first signature of Chief Cornstalk in one of the silver mining caves down near Hellier.
Mhm.
Way far out from where he was ever supposed to be. And that's what triggered me to start really researching Chief Cornstalk. And holy heck, and there's so much more. I mean, they really dig into the natural cave systems under
Yes.
Kentucky, which has so much to do with everything under the sun.
Yep.
Dig into
Mhm.
that. You'll be on that for years.
Yeah, you're touching.
So interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, you're touching on missing 411 and
Yes.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
guess
all
there's a
Goblins.
Yeah,
Big
new
time
movie out on
The
that
Kentucky
too.
Goblins.
Yes.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
or is that a book? The UFO connection for the missing 411? I think
I
he
want
just
it. There's. I think he's doing something.
yeah, something
Who's-
along those lines.
He just
I
put
can't wait
something
to
out, I
discuss
think,
that.
like that.
Yeah. Just like last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, I saw something
Yeah,
about
he
that.
released a new one.
Yes, I heard
It might
that.
be on YouTube or something. I don't know.
I'll
Yeah,
check it
I
out.
will. I'll check it out.
I need to
but
go
I
back
mean-
and rewatch Hellier too.
I know.
gonna be
I started
continuing
it
to
the
go
other
through
day,
this.
and I need to watch it again. It's been a while.
Oh gosh, Hellier too, and then you start getting into Pan. And
Yeah,
Yes.
I've got a whole section on Pan
yeah. I mean,
and the Fae, and then Pam starts getting excited because she just heard
And then
the
I get
Fae.
excited again because the Fae are there. Yes. It's just a vicious circle.
Yeah.
It is. It's all
You-
connected. It's all connected.
It is all
if y'all hang out, I think this. I think this series that we're starting tonight. I think it's going to start showing how everything is connected.
and things that
It is.
are brandished paranormal actually have very normal ties that they're not all as out there as they might seem by themselves when you realize all of the things that came before them. Yeah.
Well,
So
I
it is all connected.
I think that this book made a great jumping off point because we're going to talk about things like the Anubis caves. We're going to talk about articles found in canyons and pyramids and all kinds of stuff, and it's all going to tie back to the origins of the people of this continent. And So I think we're going to be referring back to this book a bunch,
Yep.
Mhm.
for one thing. But I mean, if they did have mental powers, and that's, or just better technology, or information passed down to them from another civilization that was destroyed,
Mhm.
um, it all ties in, and there's so many similarities with everybody all over the world, the religions and stuff. And I'm just going to say this now: I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't think the similarities between all these religions is A, an accident. B, I don't think it diminishes any of the religions at all,
No.
No.
for them to have a common, uh, what's the word
Origin.
I'm looking for? A common origin.
Mhm.
I think that if anything, it reinforces your belief in that religion to find out that, hey, these people on the other side of the world have the same stories. Their religions came from the same place. So maybe they're not all that different from me.
No, they're not.
So, I mean, like I said, that's just my philosophy. I'm a Christian,
Mhm.
but I don't think any of this information we've talked diminishes that. I think
No.
it reinforces it. And
Mhm.
if you're a Buddhist
And
and you find out that this information reinforces that, that's great too.
yep.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
And I'm a Christian as well, and a lot of these things we've looked at has
Sorry.
I don't know how to word it. It hasn't really changed my belief, but it's made me question certain things. You know, like the
I don't think it
origin.
diminishes anything.
No, absolutely it doesn't.
I think it
I don't believe it
magnifies
does.
it. I really do.
Well, I have an author for you guys. I've just recently handed one of these books to Pam to delve into. There's a gentleman by the name of Paul Wallace. He's just put out his third book. It's called the Eden series. He is a gentleman very high up in the Christian church. And he was tasked when he was a little bit younger to start moving the old Hebrew text over into English to make sure that it was all done correctly. He kind of got himself invested in it. And he found one major problem, that the word God in the Hebrew text had not been passed over into English correctly. They'd actually used it 5 different ways.
Mhm.
He took the word Elohim and they gave
Mhm.
it 5 different meanings depending on what they were using it for what book of the Bible. But what he found out was that Elohim in Hebrew meant the wise ones as in more than one God. And he said, if you go back in the text, wherever it says God, and you put in the wise ones, suddenly every text in the Bible finally makes sense. And all of the old stories finally match all of the old stories from all the other religions.
Where when
And
you're
They don't
reading,
fight each they don't
and
fight each
again
other anymore.
that takes me back to where was the diversion at? Because and this is where my biggest question is, and I know this isn't really a religious show, anything like that, but that's where for me is the diversion. You have all these past teachings, and what you said makes so much more sense. I don't consider myself a biblical scholar, but I base my beliefs on the Judeo-Christian values,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and it doesn't diminish that.
no.
But that's where my question is: where was that
Yeah.
diversion? Who
So
changed that? And that's where it comes to control.
you
It
will
does come
get,
to control.
if you get his books, you will get to find out why. He delves deep back to the very beginnings and he breaks it all down. And it's some of the most amazing, astounding information I have ever heard. Um, check him out, Paul Wallace, Wallice. And he has a series. One of them's Exit of Eden. I'm trying to remember. I think hold on.
And Willie on that. Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah. Willie said, like, even in the beginning of the King James Bible, when he creates Adam, and he said he made Adam in their image.
Mm-hmm.
So here's one of them, Echoes of Eden. And if you'd like, he also has a YouTube page where he breaks them all down. It's really interesting. He breaks them down in like 10-minute sections from the beginning to the end, how it started, when the different books were rewritten, when books were taken out of the Bible, who did it and why. And some really interesting information in there. Like he talks about at the time when they brought Christianity into Rome. They did it with the understanding that they were going to use it to hold power over the people rather than to bring religion and, uplifting into the community.
That was not
yeah. So what they did was they rewrote the books to be more of a, you will do as I say or you'll burn in hell. And it was at that time that they gave the upper echelons of the church purple robes, because you only had purple robes in Rome if you were in the high council or if you were a legislator. Yeah. You were only allowed to wear purple if you were in charge. And that is at the time. Now, if you look in the church nowadays, who gets to wear the purple robes?
Yep.
So you're going to find, it's just so full of all of this kind of stuff. He even breaks it down. He has found where dragons existed in every religion. And where other religions have stated, yes, we have dragons, people are like, oh, it's mythologies. But when it pops up in the Bible, and it does, they say, oh, it means something else when they say dragon.
Well, and I've read the Bible.
He's found dragons in every religion.
And what you're telling me makes so much sense, because there's been several times I'm like, man, God did it differently a couple books back. Why would he change? He doesn't.
Yep.
Well,
God doesn't change.
Version.
But what if there's several people? Then if whatever name, that makes sense. I don't think it diminishes it at all.
I look at the King James version of the Bible. It's called that because King James wanted the Bible to be readdressed, to be made more palatable, to be made more towards what they felt the rules should be.
Yep.
And there's where you lost some of the books right there too.
Yeah. Big Willie said he didn't seem to really stutter when he was talking to Job about Leviathan. Yeah. He said, but I agree with you guys. What you guys are saying, Christianity in quotation marks at least made the modern version was definitely control tactic in a twisted version that
100%.
man-made versus original. See, and this is my personal journey, I mean, spiritual wise, but when you look at the what we were all taught, I mean, I've never been a huge churchgoer, but I was a kid, you go to vacation Bible school, and you repeat the John 3:16 and all that, and I find the Bible interesting, the stories, the parables, the Psalms, all of that, because there's so much wisdom there.
Stories too.
There's so much wisdom in that. And the basis for those are phenomenal for anybody. And I'm not trying to convert people. I'm not. But just that alone. But again, I believe, I'm starting to believe, I would say, that we are meant to I'm not sure how I want to say this. We're not meant to believe in God the way the current Bible is saying, meaning that God intended the lessons of the Bible a totally different way than what we're taught. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm confusing myself or
I think
not.
in a lot of ways you're right, and I do think that politics and power have gone a long way into shaping the current Bible.
Yep.
Um, I think you're right. I feel like we are intended to be seekers, to seek after the
Yes.
truth. I don't really. I know it's evil to question the Bible, and I don't question any of its major tenets at all. But there's more truth. I mean, you can't fit all the knowledge about God into a little book like that.
Right.
We're
It's sad that
intended.
something so amazing was taken and weaponized, because it
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look back
Yeah.
at like uh early pagans, in Ireland, Scotland, and I'm just using that particular point of reference. All of their religion was taken over when the Church of England came in, or whoever it was that came in and basically defeated them. They knocked down their places of worship and they built their great big
Mhm.
churches on top of them. They took their holy days, like Easter was Auster. They changed it to Easter and made it about their religion, and even down to December. The Yule was turned
Yeah.
into, that was Jesus's birthday. That's when it's celebrated now, and that's continued on today. And those places are there, and those ideas were just, like we talked about earlier, within a generation or two, the majority of that's wiped out because that memory is gone. Once this becomes what you were grown up in.
But it doesn't surprise me
No.
because humans suck
Mm-hmm.
and we will weaponize everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rocks, sticks,
Words.
ideas,
Yep.
words. We will
I
do it
guess
because we suck. And
I
that's
guess
why aliens won't stop and talk to us.
I guess my hang up.
Nobody wants to stop in our hood.
It's
I
pretty
wouldn't.
rough.
It's a
It's
pretty
rough
rough
down
neighborhood.
But I guess my hang up though is if you look at Buddhism, Hindu, especially those two that come to mind right away. Maybe even, I don't know so much about Confucianism. I don't know a lot about that. I have an idea. But if you look, even American Indians, how spiritual those people are.
Right.
I mean, you have Christians and their take on it. Then you have the Muslims and their take on it. And I'm not poo-pooing any of them. I respect your beliefs. In return, I ask you to respect mine. But if you look at how spiritual that these religions and belief systems are, and compare them to Christianity, or so, they're more in. Seems to me like they're more in sync with Earth and the universe and all that.
They revere nature. A lot of them do.
Right.
Yeah. And not to say that they worship nature. They revere it. They live with it. They understand that the earth is a living, breathing entity, and we are not here to use it up. We're here to preserve it for our children, and we're doing a really shitty job of that right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean that's kind of
off topic,
but
not too. I'm looking really. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the series. And after the show, we'll kind of discuss where we're going to go for next week.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about the ancient annals of Kentucky again and again and again during this series, and a whole bunch of other books that's out there. You could probably make a career out of trying to figure this out.
We're barely going to scratch the surface.
We're
on
barely
this.
going to scratch the surface. So, but I will
It's so
take this time towards the end of our broadcast just to say, get out there, do your own research,
Yep.
make up your own mind, speculate.
And if
Think
you run
outside the
across
box.
some cool stuff, let us know.
The man don't want you to think for yourself, so you need to.
Suggestion, everybody. Get off your goddamn PCs, get off your laptops and get off your phones and go to a good old used bookstore and
Mhm.
hunt. You will find the most amazing things. Like I said, you're not going to find the Annals of Kentucky super easy on the internet. You're going to type that in and just find all the editions you want.
You know how hard it was for me to
unredacted.
find it?
You're going to find the one we told you about, which
Yeah.
is good because there's a whole bunch of them that are not good.
Yeah, but get into those good old used bookstores and dig. You're going to find the most amazing things that you've never heard of before, and you would never have heard of if you hadn't gone digging in the first place. The internet is fantastic, but it also has a way of filtering out the stuff that it does not want you to have. Just like if you put in Mandela effect, the first 3 pages of the internet is going to tell you that it's a farce, that it's fake. Just about anything paranormal, your first 3 pages are going to be bullcrap. So get away from it for a while and go hit the books, because there is something amazing to be found in every good used bookstore. Plus, it's super fun.
And open your
Yeah,
It is
open
super
your
fun.
mind.
Yeah,
Open your mind.
just open your
Take a
mind.
chance.
Read a good old book.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when you pull out a book, if something doesn't resonate with you, let it go. Move on. Take from it what you get from it, basically. If something doesn't resonate, don't waste your time on it. Move on to the next chapter.
Mhm.
Don't give up on it off the first chapter too, if you think it's not what you're looking for, because you'll be surprised what you'll find, like just coming across the Hebrides Islands that we totally missed. That's crazy.
That's right.
I can't get over that. That's nuts.
Yeah,
And on the flip side, if you find something that goes against your own thinking or flips it on end, don't discount it. Write it down. Even if you think nothing of it at the time, write it down, because later on, I guarantee there's going to be something else that will lend to that. And then suddenly you're going to be like, maybe I should relook at that.
Yep.
Just a little
Challenge
bit.
yourself. Challenge your beliefs. I mean, that's how you're going to grow.
Yeah.
I've got one book in particular that I've gone back to, I don't know how many different times for different subjects. And so it's got annotations and, different colored stickies in it for different things that I hit, but it's the same book, but I used it in 8 or 9 different ways for 8 or 9 different things. Fun stuff.
Hit those
Get out there and
bookstores.
research, people. And share. If you find something cool, let us know.
Yeah, let us know, definitely. And with that, let's see, we got what see, Alicia said you guys should check out the book In Search of Noah's Ark by David Balsiger and Charles.
I'm writing
E.
it down,
Taylor.
Alicia.
She said it's really interesting. With that being said, though, obviously we do challenge you. We hope we challenge you, your beliefs. We hope we give you a different perspective. I kind of think that's the point of the show. And we also encourage you, definitely go do your own research if we spark an interest or something like that. Mark,
and challenge our beliefs too.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
If you find something that counteracts what we've said, bring it to us. We want to hear it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And not to fight you on it either, but to add something new. I mean, if you can
Yes.
change my thinking on something, kudos.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Add another
A new
level
path
of
to go
what we
down.
found.
Yay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Like I said, ADD, the internet, and reasonably good research skills.
But
And you get
if you do find something, by all means, reach out to us. Reach out to us on Facebook at the What If Tomorrow podcast group. Email us, whatiftomorrowpc@gmail.com. By all means, we'd love to hear from you, especially if you're challenging us, if you're offering something new. If you're coming out being a total jackass, I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to be honest. But, if you're real, go for it. I mean, by all means. That being said, Mark, you did a good job closing it out, man. I don't have anything else to add to it. So with that being said, we'll catch you guys next episode.
Have a good night.
Bye.